Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Monday, February 26th, 2024. And our top story today, self-driving autonomous vehicles will be the ticket out of isolation and loneliness. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Frank Douma is from the Hubert H. Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. Frank, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
This is a very fascinating topic to me. And I want to start kind of pull back a little bit and let's talk about some challenges that our fellow Americans, maybe that have some disabilities, have in connecting and going places, especially those in rural areas. You want to start there?
Sure. Yeah. Transportation access is a fairly significant issue from a policy perspective, because if you're able to drive your own car and you have your own car, you can pretty much go where you want when you want to. But if you're not able to have access to that car and be able to drive when you want to, you are then limited to other alternatives. And in urban areas, we do have quite a few. Transit, Uber and Lyft and taxis are fairly common and so forth. But in small towns, rural areas and so forth, those alternatives are not really quite as available. There are things called rural transit that do their best to provide a very good service, but the just the number of users and the population density doesn't really exist to create a service that is available all the time. So there's been a continual challenge in trying to figure out how to continue to provide a transportation service that is almost as good, if not as good, as what able-bodied people are able to do.
Yeah, and also the services you mentioned, Lyft, Uber. I don't want to taxis. I don't leave anybody out. Don't write any hate mail. But also buying your own vehicle. So they have now you can convert a traditional vehicle to allow for someone to drive. Those are all pretty costly, right? I mean, those are things that if you're on a modest income, which many of us are, fixed income, that can be certainly a challenge as well.
That's correct. Yeah, it's not a small investment to be able to own and maintain your own vehicle. So not everyone has the savings or the ability to even finance that cost, and so being able to pay just for the trip is a much more affordable way for them to accomplish the travel that they need to do.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about autonomous vehicles. Where do they fit in? And I think a lot of the listeners, the audience, is familiar with Tesla, Google. Others have started to develop. Apple maybe have even started to develop these autonomous vehicles. But where does that fit in here? Because in Uber, part of the Uber cost is not only the vehicle, but it's the driver. The driver has to get paid. There's gasoline costs, all that kind of thing. So where do autonomous vehicles fit in here?
Yeah, so vehicle autonomy, or automated vehicles, as sometimes they're called, because they actually, in many cases, need to connect to other parts, so they're not really autonomous in the real definition of the word. So I'll go back and forth between those terms.
Sure.
But the dream of vehicles that can drive themselves has been around for almost since people started to have their own vehicles to drive. There's videos from the late 1930s from GM kind of promoting that people will be able to safely get around in cars that are radio controlled. And that has an appeal in that it takes away the need to be physically able to drive, to be able to bring that kind of mobility and access to everyone. And economically, there is an important piece to look at here, because as you mentioned, for Uber and Lyft, what you're paying for in part is the driver, but also at least in Minnesota, when you look at these rural transit services, interestingly enough, there's kind of a dichotomy going on, where on the one hand, the greatest expense of operating those buses in rural areas actually is the driver. But the amount that those services are able to pay the driver tends to be less than what that driver could make driving a school bus or driving a freight vehicle of some sort. So there becomes not just a cost factor, but an availability factor. And just not being able to have the people to drive the vehicle when a rider might want to use it.
Yeah, and just last question before we go to a commercial break. How close are we to applying this technology, the autonomy of getting a vehicle, maybe driverless, maybe it's connected, however you define it? How close are we to making this a reality? Because I think in the past, I've read articles where there's been some challenges making this happen, but there may be some case studies where it's actually been deployed successfully.
Yeah, currently we're at what the greatest we're at is what we call level 4, which is the idea that the vehicle can drive itself in certain situations. Level 5 is where the vehicle can go from point A to point B, virtually any point A to any point B, by itself. So
Yeah.
we currently do need to have human drivers for a number of trips, or human attendants to be able to make sure that you're able to complete the trip as you want to. Um, but the ability for the vehicle to go on its own set path is becoming something that is more and more possible within those certain parameters. And so I think we'll continue to see that progress as the technology gets good. It's interesting that the greatest factor actually is other human drivers. Dealing with snow, dealing with other obstacles, dealing with stop signs. The technology is doing all right trying to pick those up, but trying to predict what another human's going to do has been their current greatest challenge.
Well, I think we've been dealing with that issue since the beginning of mankind. But Frank, I want to take a very quick break. We're going to pick this up on the other half of the commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk more about applying autonomous vehicles to rural areas and a lot more. You're going to want to stay tuned right here, BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Frank, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment number 2 this morning.
Absolutely.
A really interesting discussion, and I think, as you said, the technology is there. I mean, there are vehicles today that you can keep your hands off the wheel. Yeah, I was just looking at, I think it was like Chevy Tahoe has that ability. There are probably other manufacturers that do that. Let's talk about Go Marty, because this is a proven case study. Can you tell us about that and how it works in the Grand Rapids transit system and the Grand Rapids area?
Right. So Go Marty is a pilot transportation service in Grand Rapids, Minnesota area. If folks don't know, it's up in the north central part of the state, not too far, but not all the way to the headwaters of the Mississippi. Um, it has a very good rural transit service called operated by the Arrowhead Regional Development Commission. And if you go up to Grand Rapids, you'll see their vehicles. But they, for the reasons that we talked about a little bit earlier, operate basically on a 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. I might not be perfect, but basically a restricted schedule. And I've been involved in a number of studies up in that area over the last 10 to 15 years, where we've tried to get at that question of how can you help people be able to have some mobility without always relying on friends or relatives outside of those times that are covered by the transit service. And so we've talked about a number of different solutions, places where you could meet to carpool or kind of virtual ride board, things like that. But the opportunity to deploy connected and automated technology brings a new element and opportunity because it brought some flexibility for the timing. They're able to operate their vehicles, and they've got 5 Toyota Sienna minivans right now, 3 of which are accessible for people with disabilities. They're able to adjust the time to start later in the day and operate into the evening several days a week, which complements the existing service rather than competes with it. And it creates the opportunity to show that you can create with the use of technology a supplemental transit service, even in a small town setting, that helps bring some new freedom to folks who are otherwise just using a more limited service.
Yeah, I want to focus on that. I call it liberty, freedom. How liberating is this for the individuals that use the service? So just talking about Grand Rapids and these Sienna vehicles that are not autonomous, they're automated, I guess is what we want to refer. But how liberated do these people feel? I have imagined that they feel they're not tied down any longer.
Right. It creates a new opportunity for them to go out and about. One of their biggest champions talks about how she's able to, and she uses a wheelchair, how she's able to go see her grandkids do a show at the high school, or be involved with her church youth group on a weekend, Sunday afternoon, something like that, or even be able to go to church on Sunday morning. Those are some things that have been real benefits for folks in the area.
Now let's talk about, this is obviously a pilot or a one of a few programs in the area. How do you leverage this and apply it across all of Minnesota, and the
Yeah,
nation,
well,
by the way, and the nation?
and the nation, yeah.
Let's focus
Well,
on Minnesota.
first I should mention that it's not something that's exclusively happening in Minnesota. There are other pilots happening elsewhere in somewhat different flavors, but all kind of there's a number of ways that it's been aimed to try and improve mobility and access. And it's a matter of being able to bring all the right stakeholders on board, get people behind the idea that this does have some significant startup costs. Also to identify where the if you will, the market is. How do you serve the people that are going to need it? Get the existing transportation planners, the city officials, everybody behind the idea that you're going to have this new service come in. The Go Marty project has obtained some additional grants to extend and expand their service actually out to other areas. They'll be able to access a food shelf on the edge of town, also community college that's a little bit further out, being able to reach some new audiences there. And so it's a matter of both, if you will, human capital and economic capital to bring this forward. But as we saw in Grand Rapids, if you do it right, people will use the service. And the greatest complaint that we observed with Go Marty was that people said it doesn't come out to where I am yet. And when's that going to happen? And that's a sign that you've created something that folks would like to see more of.
Yeah, certainly demand. And then it just comes to when I'm not a city planner, but you have to figure out, as you said, where the demand is, where people are, and economically does it make sense. Frank, we're going to have to leave it there. Really interesting. And really appreciate you joining us in the program. We look forward to having you back again very soon.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much.
And that wraps up this episode of BRNAM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check out our latest content? Well, visit our website. Hey, we're back again tomorrow with another edition of BRNAM. We'll have a very special guest and, of course, an important topic. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.